This is a 60 minutes yin yoga practice for happy, healthy hips. Let's come into a comfortable seated position to begin our yin yoga practice. We will need a bolster or something to double as a bolster, a couple of blocks or something again just to double as a couple of blocks, and a blanket. And start to stir the upper body, small circles. Just want to warm up to the spine, to the low back and shoulders, just a little bit of movement. Maybe stretch the arms overhead, tilt over to one side and the other. And then let's begin today's yoga practice, yin yoga practice in our Child's Pose. So to do this, you may need a blanket for those knees, perhaps a bolster or a pillow to rest on. Knees a little wider, bring the toes together, let the hips sink back towards the heels, and if you're using your pillow or bolster, you may want to slide it under the chest, under the belly, so that you have something to rest on. We're trying to bring the floor up towards us so that while we're still stretching, we're not holding on to too much tension. If you find your head too far away from the ground, you may even want to grab a hold of a block so that you can rest your head on it. Allow the arms to relax. Soften those hips. Feel them grow a little heavier. Deep breaths. Let us begin with the breath. In through the nose and out through the nose. Inhale through the nose, let the lungs expand fully. And exhale, feel yourself sink a little deeper. Feel free to adjust anytime throughout this practice. Allow the feet to soften. Release the calf muscles. Inner thighs soft. Feel those hips start to grow a little heavier. Try not to do any work. Allow gravity to do the work for you. As you breathe deeply, allow the breath to expand your lungs. Let the breath wrap around the back of your body. And as you exhale, find a little bit more softness. Feel yourself sink even deeper into the mat. As you start to relax, you may even want to remove the props underneath you as your body begins to soften a little bit more. Relax shoulders. Soften your arms. Hands and fingers relaxed. Relax your facial features. Soften the cheeks. Let the tongue fall away from the roof of your mouth as you relax the jaw. Relax the skin around your eyes, that space in between your eyebrows, the forehead. And with your next exhale, soften even more. Our yin yoga practice is very much a process of letting go of our busy life, resisting the urge to move. Keep breathing. Bring your mind back to your breath. Part of the challenge of our yin practice is to be in the moment. All right. And just like that, we begin to move out of our child's pose, Come on back up into a tabletop and just a little bit of intuitive movement, perhaps in cats and cows, letting the hips shift side to side. A little bit of movement, shifting back and forth, maybe just stretching out those legs a little. And next pose is going to be our Sphinx Pose. You might, if you're using a blanket, you might want to move it forward a little under your pelvic bone. Have your forearms parallel to one another. Bring the elbows under the shoulders, but if that's a little bit too much, walk the elbows forward. Feet about hips width apart. Relax the feet. And you can let the head hang a little to get a stretch to the back of the neck. And soften, close your eyes or soft gaze down the nose. Deep breaths. Check in with your facial features. Soften your cheeks and your jaw. Relax the belly. Soften the legs. And reconnect with your breath. Deep breaths. In our yin practice, we will need to be able to distinguish between slight discomfort and pain. There is, in some of these poses, there is a little bit of discomfort. Right now, you're probably feeling a little bit through that low back. You have to ask yourself, is it an acute pain? Or is it just a slight discomfort that you can stand to be in? We're almost there. Our next pose is going to be seal pose. You have to be very careful as you approach this pose. You may want to stay in Sphinx pose and just hold it there or rest on the floor, just soften down onto the mat. For seal pose, walk your hands out a little wider towards the edges of the mat. Press down into your hands and trying to straighten those arms a little or a lot to deepen that front stretch. Keep that slow, steady breath. Remember, inhales through the nose and slow exhales out through the nose. Keep those legs soft. If you find it a little bit too much, come on back down into your Sphinx pose. Hold it there. Otherwise, remain in your seal pose. Keep that breath flowing in through the nose, out through the nose. Legs still relax. You may find that you're squeezing a little through the glutes just to protect that low back, and that's okay. But do your very best to keep that breath flowing. Do not hold onto your breath here. And then soften all the way back down to the ground. One cheek on the ground. A slight shift of the hips from side to side, or lifting your feet off the mat and taking very careful windshield wiper movements. You might want to press back up into a tabletop position to take some cats and cows, just checking in with the low back. Our next pose is going to be Dragon Pose. For this pose, slide your right foot forward and have your left knee at least slightly behind your left hips for this pose to be effective. Keep that left leg straight back, toes pointed if possible. If it's hard, keep those toes curled under. Use those blocks to gauge how much of a stretch you need. You'll feel this stretch the front of the left hips, those hip flexors. If you need more, slide the blocks in a little closer towards the hips, lifting the belly away from your thighs. And you can rest your hands on your thighs, so you can bring your hands down onto those blocks. Try not to lean too deeply into those blocks. You want to keep a certain lightness about you. Keep that breath flowing. You can close your eyes here. Be okay with the discomfort. Relax your shoulders. Relax your neck. Check in with the breath. Every time you feel that you need a little bit more, you can adjust that left knee back, or you can lift your chin up. Stay in the moment. And release. Counter stretch by shifting your hips back and straightening the front leg a little. Just a little bit of movement. Move your way back to tabletop or downward dog. And give that a good stretch out. Again, just some intuitive movements in between the poses. Get ready to set up for the other side. Step the left foot forward and the left knee over the left ankle, and just making sure that that right leg is straight back, right knee at least slightly behind the hips. You may want to start off with the hands on the block at a lower setting and then make your way up. And you want to do your best to keep those hips level and shoulders level. If you need a little bit more, continue to walk the block in towards the hips. Try not to lean too much into those blocks. They're just there for a little bit of support. Keep breathing. Don't let the mind wander. Bring it back to the moment. A little bit of lift through the chin to deepen the stretch. Letting the hips sink a little bit more. Always looking for that edge. Holding these stretches, the edge starts to disappear. We just want to just lean into it a little bit. Just a little bit more. And let's soften. Counter stretch. Straighten out that left leg. Move back into a tabletop or downward dog. Stretch those legs out, and a little bit of intuitive movements. Pedaling out the feet, shifting the hips side to side. Whatever feels best for your body. Just listening to the body here. Our next pose is going to be frog pose. You may need a blanket to support those knees, a little cushioning for those knees, and a bolster or pillow under the belly, under the chest may be nice, so have it close to you just in case. To set up, we need to have our knees a little wider, line the hips up with the knees, and you're going to have your heels back with the toes pointed outwards like a frog. Allow the upper body to relax, and to get a deeper stretch out of this pose, you may need to shift the hips back a little. You want to feel this through the groin, the inner thighs. Allow the upper body to soften. If you can come all the way down onto the ground, that's great. Otherwise, relax your forehead or cheek down on a bolster or a block. Deep breaths. Send those breaths to the low back, the inner thighs. Do your very best to soften. Relax the feet. Relax those shoulders and arms. If you find you're not getting quite enough from this pose, very carefully shift those hips back a little bit more towards those heels. Is your face soft? Remember to keep breathing. That slow and steady yoga breath. Check in with the mind. Make sure you're present. It's normal for the mind to wander off in this pose. Stay with it. Bring the mind back to the moment. We're moving into a softer frog pose before we transition, staying here just for about a minute. Bring your toes together and draw the hips back towards those heels. Allow the upper body to relax. Bring your forehead down onto a block or all the way down onto the mat. Keep breathing, belly relaxes. Soften your fingers. Slowly make our way out of this pose, pressing onto your hands, shifting the hips away from your toes and inching your knees back towards one another. Stretch one leg out and then the other. You may want to come back into down dog. Let's give that a little bit of movement in down dog once again. And then we're going to set up for our next pose. To do this, you may want to have your blankets or bolster to sit on or a pillow to sit on. And we're coming into shoelace pose. Let's bring that left knee over the right. And you can stretch the right leg out if you want, if you have issues with your right knee. In an ideal world, our knees are lined up and there's a straight line from one toe to the other. But you do your best approximation, slight blocks under the front knee if you need to. You can stay upright, or if it's okay to bow forward, release and soften forward. If you can't quite feel this pose, lucky you, but you might want to deepen the stretch by sliding the feet a little further forward so that the shins become more parallel to the front. So it's more of a straight line from heel to knees to heel, and then let the upper body relax forward. Feeling this through the hips, the outer thighs. Relax the neck, soften the arms, deep breaths, slow exhales. Every once in a while, you may need to adjust, lifting up slightly to lengthen that spine. Then exhale, belly towards the knees as best as you can, and then soften. Remember, it's okay to stay upright here. It's okay if you have that right leg straightened and just left knee over the right. Be sure to adjust accordingly. At the same time, if you're not quite feeling this, be sure to seek that edge, find a little bit more depth. If this becomes a little bit too much for you, see if you can focus on your breath. Start off with that, deep inhales and long exhales. If it is still a little bit too much, then come on out, just a little bit of windshield wipers, and then set up again and try it once again. If you're new to this practice, it takes a while to get used to the stillness. Be okay with it. Just a little bit more depth. A little lift and soften. Start to make your way out of this pose. Lean back slightly so that you can unwind those legs. Let those knees gently drop side to side, and careful windshield wiper. Maybe straighten those legs out, a little bit of movement. And it should feel really nice. A little bit of adjustment. And let's get ready to set up for the other side. Take the right knee over the left, and remember those adjustments. You can just stay upright. In an ideal world, your knees lined up and you've got that left knee bent, but again, that left leg can straighten out. You can use whatever props you need to make this easier for yourselves. Stay upright if needed. Otherwise, if you're okay coming forward, slowly lean forward. Takes a little while for those muscles to adjust. And those breaths really do help. So big inhale through the nose. Feel that breath wrap around the entire back of the body. And then exhale to soften. Readjust as needed, but eventually find your stillness, soften, let go. Every once in a while, lift up slightly to lengthen the spine, and then soften, release forward. Keep that breath flowing. Readjust once again if you need more, always seeking that depth, always looking for a little bit more. As we start to breathe, that stretch will dissipate, so just lift up slightly to lengthen the spine, and an exhale, release forward. Final few breaths. We'll slowly make our way out of this pose. Unwinding those legs, leaning slightly back and taking windshield wipers. Just letting both knees gently drop side to side. And then we're going to set up our next pose, which is going to be our Pigeon Pose. So before we come into that, just take a downward facing dog or tabletop, stretch those legs out and make those intuitive movements. And then when you are ready, you're going to start by sliding one knee forward behind the wrist. So let's take our right knee forward behind the right wrist and then take that left leg straight back and just make sure that you use any blocks or blankets underneath that right hip if you find that your hips are not quite level or if it's lifted too high. And a nice long spine here and fold forward. If you find that you are too high off the ground, grab a hold of that bolster or a pillow and bring one cheek down onto the bolster, just relaxing your arms. You should be soft and relaxed here. And if you find that you don't need your props, just go ahead and remove them. You might find that after a few breaths, you begin to soften and those blocks and props becomes unnecessary. Check in with the mind. Make sure you remain present. If you find that those thoughts are invading you, just acknowledge those thoughts and then let them go and bring yourself back to the moment. And each time you do that, it becomes a little easier to stay present. And if you have one cheek down, you might want to switch it around to the other side so that we're a little bit more even. This is about the halfway point. Sometimes the tension in those hips will creep up to the shoulders at this point. So just check in, make sure the shoulders are relaxed, the face is soft. Deep breaths. Long exhales. All right, final few breaths. And we're getting ready to come into Swan Pose. Only do this if you feel that you could use a little bit more. Slide your feet in a little closer towards those hips. Walk your hands in towards the body. And it's looking for a little bit of back bend. Stretch to the front of the body. Use those blocks if you could use a little bit more lift. Okay. Not staying here too long. It's just a short little pose. And we're going to start to make our way out of this pose. Pressing down into the hands to lift off of your swan pose. And then again, some intuitive movements will feel really nice. Shifting back into down dog, pedaling out the feet, shifting the hips side to side. And a little bit of more movement in tabletop if you need more of it. Shifting hips side to side again right there. Some cats and cows. And then we're moving to Pigeon Pose on the other side. Slide the left knee forward behind the left wrist. Place a block under the left hip if you need a little support. And use a bolster or pillow under the belly to rest the upper body. Release forward, making sure that the left leg is straight back, the hips and shoulders level to the floor. Bring one cheek down onto the bolster, soften the upper body. Breathe. It's okay to readjust, but try to resist the urge to fidget. We want to really look for stillness and then focus on that breath. If you have one cheek down, bring the other cheek onto the bolster, switching it around so that we are even. And soften and release. If you find you need a little bit more, slide that front foot forward a little bit more so that your shins are closer to parallel to the top of the mat, and then settle in once again. Final few breaths. And walk the hands in towards the body. And you can choose to remain in Pigeon Pose or come into Swan Pose. We're just lifting the body off of your bolster, hands on the floor, on a couple of blocks, so that you're going to get a deeper stretch to the front of the body. Again, we're not holding this too long. Just open up to the front. Keep the chest lifted, the chin lifted slightly. Keep breathing. Almost there. Final few breaths. And then we're going to release, gently coming out of this pose. You can make your way back to down dog or just come into seated and take gentle windshield wiper movements. Some intuitive movements here, stretching those legs out. Our next pose is going to be supported fish pose. And you want to set yourself up on a bolster or a pillow so that your spine is lifted off the ground. And here I have the block set up, the bolster set up at an incline, and just creating a nice shape for the body to rest on. If you do not have the props, you can always roll up a blanket and just place it along the spine. It won't lift you up as high, but the idea is just to open up to the front of the body, and even if your body is flat down on the ground, it's the same concept. So go ahead and set up so that the spine is lifted just slightly off the ground or in a bolster configuration as I have here. Stretch your arms out shoulder height or until you feel a good stretch through the chest, upper chest, and you can either stretch your legs out or bring your soles of the feet together, letting the knees drop open in cobbler's pose. And it's more of a restorative yin pose. We did a few more demanding yin poses there for the hips. So let us stay here and just enjoy this pose. If you do not like to have those legs in cobbler's pose, feel free to switch it up anytime. Let your lips part gently so that you relax the face. Keep that breath flowing and just enjoy this moment here. Again, you do not have to stay with the legs in cobbler's pose. Anytime you need to stretch those legs out, go for it. If it's hard to keep those legs stretched out, you can bring the feet in, draw the knees in towards one another and just soften there. Let's begin to move out of this pose. Draw the feet in, take windshield wipers, maybe give yourself a little hug. Roll over to one side, rest there for a moment, a soft rounded spine in fetal position, cradling your head. And make your way back up to seated. Take gentle windshield wipers. And we're going to come into a spinal twist. You may need a bolster for this one. Roll over to the right side of the body. Place the left knee on your bolster. Keep the right arm stretched out and let the left shoulder drop down towards the mat. You can keep your left hand on your waist or stretch your left arm out so that your arms are out in a T position. And then finally, you can turn your gaze away from the left knee. And this is a great stretch for that low back into the abdominal muscles. Let's just stay here and relax. As you start to settle into this pose, you might not need that bolster anymore. You want to look for a little bit more depth, go ahead and remove that bolster. You can even use your right hand to very gently press that left knee down towards the ground. Get a deeper stretch that way. Stay here with this pose. A few more deep breaths. Few final deep breaths to go. And begin to unwind by bringing your left arm back over to the right side. Unwind the spine back to a fetal position and then roll onto your back. Draw the knees into the chest for a little bit of a hug, a little bit of roll out. And let's get ready to set up for the other side. So you're going to roll over to the left side of the mat. So your left side of the body. Prop that right knee on top of the bolster or your pillow. And then you want to try to bring that right shoulder down towards the ground or stretch your right arm out in a T position. So if this hurts your right shoulder, keep your hands on your waist. Otherwise, stretch it out. Turn your gaze away from the knees. Taking deep breaths. Settle in here. Relax the shoulders, soften the face, and breathe in deep into those low back muscles. If you need a little bit more, get rid of the bolster. You can use your left arm to gently draw that right knee a little closer towards the ground, deepening that stretch. Breathe. Final few breaths. Unwind the spine by bringing the right shoulder back towards the left side, back into fetal position, and then carefully roll onto your back. Take those windshield wipers, or perhaps draw the knees in towards the chest for a little bit of a roll out, circling the knees in one direction and then the next. And just a little bit more intuitive movements here. And then we're going to set up for our final pose, our dessert Savasana, onto your backs. If you're like me and would like to place a little bolster or pillow under the knees and set it up for comfort so that the back is nice and relaxed, especially that low back. And then have those legs stretched out, arms by your side, slightly away from the body, palms up. Close your eyes and breathe. Let's take a quick moment to scan the entire body to make sure that you're relaxed. Soften the toes, let them drop open. Relax the feet, the soles of the feet, and the calves. Soften your thighs and your glutes. And as your breath returns to normal, allow the belly to rise and fall gently. Soften your shoulders, your arms. Loosen your hands and fingers. Relax your facial features. Soften your jaw and cheeks, forehead and scalp. Allow the body to grow heavier and sink deeper into your space. And with calm, relaxed body and calm, relaxed mind, enjoy your Savasana. Begin to awaken from Savasana by moving your fingers, your toes, your wrists and ankles, starting to bring sensations back to the body. Circle those wrists and ankles, gently let the head drop side to side. And if it feels right and good, stretch your arms overhead with a big inhale, reach from toes to fingertips, and exhale to release. Gather the knees into the chest for one more hug, one more roll out. And roll over to the right side, come into fetal position, resting your head on your hands. Deep breaths. And then very carefully make your way back up into a comfortable seated position. You can keep your eyes here closed just for a moment longer. Finish off with a big breath. Inhale through the nose and a soft sigh out through the mouth. Thank you very much. Namaste.